freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 463 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearmsauctions.com, where you set the price on guns, ammo, and accessories. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is 50 years in the 2A fight, and our guest is Alan Gottlieb. Alan is the founder of the Second Amendment Foundation, and for 50 years, the Second Amendment Foundation has been fighting to defend, restore, and expand your Second Amendment rights.
In the battleground, I'm sorry, Dan, in the battleground of the courtroom, the fight for the Second Amendment has been built on a foundation of success with the goal of ending government overreach and the unconstitutional bans that limit your right to self-protection. Welcome back to the show, Alan.
Oh, it's always great to be with both of you. Thank you for having me. I much appreciate it.
Alan, I have to ask. So for 50 years, you've been fighting the Second Amendment fight for our rights. Did you start when you were 2?
It's true.
It feels like it sometimes. Actually, it's been 52 years doing it full time, because I started with the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, which is 2 years older than the Second Amendment Foundation. But it's our 50th anniversary of the Second Amendment Foundation, and it's just been a great ride.
Yes, it has. We've been to almost, in the last 10 years, we've been to all your conventions, and they're amazing. And the people that you bring together for that, it's awesome.
Absolutely. And I just have to start by saying congratulations to have an effort that is ongoing for 50 years. I mean, that is a huge accomplishment. What do you attribute having such longevity in this particular organization? Both of your organizations, actually. I mean, it's crazy to think.
Well, I guess I have to say that the reason we're still in existence is because the gun prohibition lobby is still in existence. As long as they keep attacking our rights, there's a need for us, and the general public has perceived the need, and we fill that void fighting back for our rights. But if the other side would go away, I guess we wouldn't be around either.
Boy, that's true. It's sort of a double-edged sword, right? It's sad that there's such a need over the past half of a century for an organization such as yours. But the fact that the other side, as much as they want to look like, they're bigger and stronger and louder all the time, you are this organization, you and the Citizens, what is it? I'm going to say it right. CCRKBA, I know is the.
Yeah, Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep Bear Arms. That's the lobbying side, and the Second Amendment Foundation is legal defense and educational side.
And you're just this unmovable, set of rocks, of walls that say, no, this is the line. This is where it stops. And I think it's an incredible thing. Over all this time, what would you say? And it's probably hard to have one pinnacle proudest moment, but what would you say your proudest moment or moments are?
You're right. It is really difficult because there've been so many great peaks of our work, that we've had so many successes in so many areas that it's really hard to say. But there's one thing that always hits me and stands out in my heart, and that was our winning the McDonald versus Chicago case at the United States Supreme Court. We're not only overturned the Chicago handgun ban, but we incorporated the Second Amendment through the 14th Amendment, making it applicable to all 50 states, opened the floodgates for all the litigation that you're seeing now, not only by the Second Amendment Foundation, but by every other gun rights group as well. And that's been really important. But I think the reason why it touches me so much is that Otis McDonald, our lead plaintiff, was an amazing individual. And, an African-American gentleman, lived in the south side of Chicago, was a janitor, lived on the street with a lot of drug trading gangs in South Chicago, did everything he could to try and keep his streets safe. Had his house, rocks through the windows, got shot at, wanted a handgun for self-protection, and the city wouldn't let him have one. He was a perfect plaintiff, so to speak. But the big part of the story was when he was younger, he lived in Mississippi, and his mother, with the last money she had, put him on a train and sent him to Chicago and said, "Go make your mama proud." And won that case in the United States Supreme Court with his name on it. We were coming steps for the U.S. Supreme Court. Otis didn't know I knew that story, but he turned to me and said, "Alan, my mama said make her proud, and thanks to you and the Second Amendment Foundation, I'm able to make my mama proud." And it's something it's just ingrained in me now, and you can't forget it. And it showed us this is not a political battle per se. I mean, this is a human rights battle. It's a human rights struggle, and it's not about a piece of paper or the Bill of Rights. It's about people. And Otis McDonald was one of those people that really touched me.
Oh, that is a beautiful story. I'm so glad you shared that with us. Of course, I know the case and all of that, but knowing the human backside, the back end of that story is, wow, that's really incredible. And just yesterday, I think I saw that SAF released a news story about a judge ruling on another Illinois case. And so isn't that interesting, the timing? What is that case about?
Yeah, we've had most of our victories, quite frankly, in Illinois and now California. But that case was about Chicago would not allow people to have firearms under a state and city statute to have firearms on public transportation. And so if you wanted to ride the train to downtown Chicago, where, by the way, the other day, I think 4 people were murdered, and shot at, and criminals don't obey laws. So they took their guns anyway, but nobody was on the train who had a gun to defend themselves, so to speak. We got that law struck down. So even if you had a concealed carry permit, you're not allowed to bring your firearm with you on your public transportation in the state of Illinois. So our case centered against Chicago, but it's really a fight against the state. And we had another victory where a federal judge said it was unconstitutional to have that law in place. And that was just really something very special. So we had another win. We've had a ton of wins in Illinois. I mean, they also had a ban on gun stores and gun ranges. We had that struck down. We had to do that one twice because we struck it down, and then they went back and passed an ordinance saying, okay, you could have them, made it so impossible that nobody could be in business and have one. We also knocked out their ban on carry to start with. The reason why Illinois is a shall issue carry system is because we struck down the ban on carry period in the state of Illinois in federal court. So we've really beat them a whole lot of times. And of course, now we're challenging a bunch of other ordinances there. We have a lower court ruling against the firearms owner's identification card. We're challenging their 18 to 20-year-old ban on being able to purchase or possess firearms. We've got a number of other cases as well that we're challenging in Illinois. There's assault ban, their magazine capacity ban. So we're pretty engaged fighting in Illinois, which is definitely for gun rights a battleground state.
Definitely. That is wild to me. That is one state that you have that much time and energy, and court cases are not cheap. So money tied up in one state. So when these new laws come up that are completely and clearly unconstitutional and fly in the face of our Bill of Rights, do people bring those to you at the Second Amendment Foundation or CCRKBA, or do you just kind of keep your radar up all the way across all 50 states? That feels like an impossible feat.
Well, we have to keep our radar up in all 50 states, and a lot of times we have a certain legal strategy, and we look for cases that fit into that strategy. But a lot of times, people come to us, like one of our members in the state of Maryland came to us on a red flag law that he had flagged with that he ended up beating. But the bottom line is the law was not, the way it was enforced was unconstitutional, and so we have that in court, and that came from one of our members. A lot of times, in West Virginia, our 18 to 20-year-old case for young adults to be able to, get permits to carry a firearm to protect themselves came from an individual young young man who called us up and said, "Hey, I don't have my rights in this state, and I want them." And we won that case as well. So a lot of times it comes from the grassroots up to us. And a lot of times it comes where a state passes a law, like if California passes some kind of anti-gun law almost weekly, and we go out looking for plaintiffs to find a way to turn around and sue. And I think we have like 17 cases in the state of California going on at one time right now.
Wow, that is crazy. And you are on top of all of them with I mean really a fairly small team. You guys are very careful with your money. You're very frugal with your money. But where does the money come from? It's not like the government is saying, you know what, this is a worthy battle. Why don't we give you some
Let's give money to the
Oh.
let's give money to Second Amendment Foundation so they can fight us.
Exactly. It's
not
like,
the-
let's
No,
use some of
it's-
our
it's-
taxpayer money.
the other way around. We don't get any government funding, but every time we sue the government, it's taxpayers that defend the government. So it's us who end up paying for both sides of the litigation, not only our challenge, but the government's defense. We currently have over 55 lawsuits going on at one time nationwide right now. And you're right, that it does get costly. And we raise our money from individual people who donate to us. We've got 720,000 members and contributors, supporters across the country that help fund it. And thank heavens for them, because otherwise we couldn't bring this litigation. You're right. It is an awful lot to track. And while we have a very lean, mean staff, we do have about 36 outside attorneys that bring these cases on our behalf that we work with. So we have a slew of trained Second Amendment, activist civil rights attorneys that work our cases and discount their rates to us. So we don't pay the rate card, so to speak, and that helps a whole lot as well. But in all honesty, an average case costs us over $250,000, and that's pretty much just going to the trial court level. When you get to the appeals and if it goes to the Supreme Court, some of these cases, chalk up over $1 million per case. So it gets rather expensive to litigate, and I guess it sticks in my throat as well that we have to pay for the other side. I mean, they're our tax dollars, so gun owners are paying, to the government when we sue them as well. And it's just, I guess it's unfair, but that's the way the system is.
So Alan, we've you've been doing this for 50 years, and there's waves where things are going really well and things are kind of hard. Do you think that we're winning overall?
Oh, most definitely. There's no doubt that we were winning pre-Supreme Court decision in the Bruen case, but the Bruen case really accelerated our victories tremendously. It opened up the door to us being able to file a lot more lawsuits on ones that we were afraid to file before because we didn't want to set bad precedent. But now the court doors are open to us more favorably, and we're able to file a lot more suits now than we were before. That's why we have over 55 at one time. I never could have imagined that. I mean, to be honest about it, having a half a dozen was like a big thing. We're close to 60. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. In fact, right now, if I can just go on, we have the so-called Vanderstock case known as Vanderstock on frames and receivers at the Supreme Court right now. They accepted it. The briefing is being done, and we'll have oral arguments in the coming up in the fall. We have a Maryland cert petition before the United States Supreme Court challenging their Sullivan ban. We hope it's the third time we've had this back to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court keeps reversing, remanding, and for lower court decision that keeps messing it up. And so now we're back to the third time with the Supreme Court on this case, which hopefully will eliminate these so-called assaultment bans in about 8 states around the country. And then on top of that, we just won an 18 to 20-year-old case as well that the state of Illinois is appealing to the United States Supreme Court. So we technically have 3 cases before the Supreme Court right now, 2 that we've won and one that we've won, 2 that we've won and one that's on appeal by the other side. So it's rather busy when you have 3 cases at one time before the highest court in the land. That's amazing.
It is amazing. And it's almost like these lower courts, they're almost doing us a favor. Correct me if I'm wrong in my logic here. They're almost doing us a favor by kicking it up to the next, to the next, to the next, because if it gets to the Supreme Court justices are going to go, well, wait a minute, we just filed on Bruen, right? We just decided on Bruen, and Bruen is going to tell you these things are not constitutional. These things are not okay. And so, you know, am I wrong in thinking that, they're silly in one way, but they're almost doing us a favor because one by one they have to fall because Bruin is the new um
Guide.
Some
guide, I guess. I mean, the Bill of Rights is what it is, but Bruin said, yes, this is what the Bill of Rights said, right?
Well, what Bruin really said, that what helped us out in Bruin was, is they basically said, when you look at the Second Amendment, you have to look at the text of it and the history.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a case where it's an interest balancing test of what's good for public safety, what's not good for public safety. Those aren't the arguments anymore. The argument is what the text says and the history of it at the time it was ratified. And so they have to be able to find a justifiable way. The burden shifts from us to the government now to show that there are laws in place have a reasonable reason to be there because by the text and the tradition of the Second Amendment and the historical analysis. And that's where they fall on their face on most of these cases. And so they can't win. But again, you're sort of right that the other side has to do some favors. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And sometimes it's like a football game. The team that scores most points is because the other team fumbled the ball that many times. And so if we go back to modern second-day litigation in the Heller case in Washington, D.C., if Washington, D.C. didn't appeal that to the United States Supreme Court, we would never have got that decision. They lost it at the appeals court level, and then they tried to take it to the Supreme Court. If they didn't, and it stayed at the appeals court level, it would have only affected Washington, D.C., because it's sort of like its own circuit, and not the rest of the country. But they erred, and they took it all the way on up, and then it was the law of the land. And so many times what we have to, when we win, it's great, but sometimes when we lose at a lower court level, it aids and abets us nationally to expand our rights.
Well,
Absolutely.
if you follow the Constitution, it looks like all these states that are trying to do anti-gun laws are fumbling because none of them hold water. If you really look at them, look how many of our rights are being destroyed already.
Absolutely. And even with all these wins over the years, there's got to be something that was either your greatest frustration in the past or something that's currently like your greatest frustration. What would you say that is?
I'm really glad you raised it because that's exactly where I wanted to go and talk about my greatest frustration. And you just asked the question just perfectly to time for what I wanted to say. My biggest frustration is that it takes forever to get these cases through the courts,
Mm.
and the appeals and things. And we have cases that gone. We've had one case going for 8 years. Our case
Oh,
challenging
yeah.
the Maryland assaultment ban, before the Supreme Court's been going on for I think 6 years.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the frustration to me is a right delayed is a right denied.
Yes.
And the delaying in this when you have a constitutional question that you need answered, one way or the other, period. It doesn't matter what side you're coming from, and you need it answered, and it takes 6 or 8 years to get an answer. That's just not the way the legal system is supposed to work.
Boy, that's the case. And, truly, when you're talking about, like, let's think about Otis McDonald that you just described his life. If he is stuck in this state for, 6 to 8 years, I mean, anything can happen in that length of time. They might even move out of the state that they're a plaintiff for. Would that impact the
Well, I think,
work you do?
yeah. Well, I think the McDonald case may have lasted 4 years, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, it does. Particularly, like, let me give you an example. Our young adult case, of 18 to 20-year-olds, where you can't get a permit to carry a firearm, or you can't buy a firearm in certain states. If you start that case when somebody is 18 years old, and it takes 4 years, the person is timed out, and the government then argues the case is moot because your plaintiff can now buy a gun, and so you never get the case to court. And
Mm,
we've seen a lot of states now figure that out, and so they stretch things out as long as they can to try and moot our cases. And so you have to
mm.
go out and find additional plaintiffs to add them, and then you got to get permission from the courts to amend your complaint to add more plaintiffs. And so sometimes the courts agree, sometimes they don't agree. So again, it does get very frustrating. So in answer to your question, is a perfect example how frustrating it can be.
Absolutely. And when you use the word moot, there is I have a trigger in my mind that there was something in New York, you'll probably remember it better than I will, where they were doing something unconstitutional, suits were being brought, and then they kind of tried to do this sidestep maneuver like New York did, like, oh, never mind, we didn't really mean that. And it wasn't a genuine, oh yes, we see the error of our ways. It was simply to nullify these actions, and they so that we couldn't get a ruling to move
Yeah.
forward.
New
Am I
York's
right
done
on
it.
that?
Yeah, you're right. New York's done that more than one time. They've done it by changing how a law gets implemented, not changing what the law says on the books, but claiming they're not enforcing it that way, so the case is now moot. Or yeah, it's on the books, but we haven't put anybody in jail yet, so you don't have the right to sue us because you're not really an aggrieved party, even though we could arrest you and put you in jail. We haven't done it, so you can't sue. Or they changed the law a hair and to make it slightly different. It's still unconstitutional, but because they changed it a hair, they're saying your suit's now moot because all your arguments were about the old law, not the new law, even though the new
Mm,
law does the same thing the old law did with just different verbiage.
mm.
How do
Wow.
you keep the courts? I mean, is there ways to stop the delays? I mean, it just seems unfair.
It's really unfair, and it also raises our costs up an awful lot. Uh, Now, unfortunately, a lot of these more than 55 cases we have going on right now are ones that have been hanging around because of these delays, where we've won, or we may have lost and want to get up to the next court level, and the court's delayed. One of my other examples, and was the Maryland assault ban, where now we're at the Supreme Court for the third time. But on the second time, when the court reversed and remanded it back, granted, reversed and remanded back to the lower court then ruled against us, saying, well, but our appeals court says, the following is still, we have to follow our appeals court, not the Supreme Court. And so went to the appeals court, and the 3-judge panel was going to rule in our favor. You can tell from oral arguments that they were on our side. But before they could write their opinion and rule, the circuit en banc grabbed it away from the appeals court to hear it, by the whole en banc panel, and then just wouldn't hear it or wouldn't rule, and they just sat there and just sat on it for like almost a year with nothing happening, and we couldn't do anything. So we filed a second appeal with the Supreme Court to please pull it away from the en banc panel because they're just stalling it and they have no intention to rule. And the Supreme Court wouldn't hear our case, but said they would after they rule. Finally, they were forced to rule. They ruled, and now we're back to the Supreme Court for the third time on the same case. Yeah, it gets very frustrating.
Absolutely. Well, thank goodness you guys stay at it. And, moving into your 50th year, also your organization, SAF, has become a second generation organization. And that is a huge deal. Danny and I, we're business owners. We have been thinking about succession plan for a long time because our daughter has shown an interest in, being a part of the business, and trying to be sure that we have taught her all the right things, and that we can easily sort of like not just hand off, but she's got to be able to come alongside us for a while and work together for a while and then hand it off. It is not an easy thing at all. And yet you and Saf are doing it brilliantly from what it appears to me. So talk to us about this second generation. Who have you brought in to do this work alongside you?
Yeah, succession plans are always tough because even when you have a plan, executing is not easy, and you have to find the right
Amen.
personnel to do it. You got to be a bit lucky sometimes, and we got very, very fortunate. We were able to bring on a gentleman named Adam Kraut as executive director to basically be the next generation and take over the lead for me. He's already taken over in a number of areas, like our gun rights policy conference this year. I've had virtually nothing to do with it because the new staff is taking it, and Adam's done a very good job. Lauren Hill we brought on, and she's now been elevated to a senior vice president, also in charge of development, and she's done a very, very, very good job of working with the firearms industry, bringing in a lot of new partners into the Second Amendment Foundation, expanding our funding bases, and she's done a marvelous job. And then Matt Coffey we brought on as director of communications, who's doing a phenomenal job working with getting us more publicity, more press, and making sure our work gets noticed by more and more people. One of our problems in the past has been we're so busy doing things, we never have time to promote ourselves. And now in our 50th anniversary year, we've been able to promote ourselves a whole lot more and expand our reach so people know what we're doing and what's going on with the right to keep and bear arms. That has helped us grow as well. And there's a bunch of other new people brought on. Bill Sack, and director of our legal strategy, has been brought on, and we just brought on a new woman as well to work with funding for grants in the states and things of that nature. We've always been very publicly funded by small dollar donors, $15, $25, and now we're seeing a lot bigger money coming in. So we've had to bring on people to help chase the bigger money, which we never used to get before. And so we've grown a whole lot in staff. Our overhead is now higher, but the payout has been much greater for us, and our success rate's going up.
Well, you just kind of threw me off, Alan, because the conference.
I want to. It's another person I don't want to leave off here. Lee Williams, who runs our investigative journalism center, where we now have people doing a lot of investigative journalism, digging into the other side, where they get their money, how they're funded, what they do, things behind the scenes that they don't want talked about, that they like to hide from the American people. We're now exposing a lot of what's going on the other side, inside baseball kind of stuff, and it's really great. It's unnerving our opponents a bit.
No, I love that. And I'm asking Dan to hold his thought for just a second, because when you said Lee Williams, one of the events that is tied to your gun rights policy conference is a day called AmCon. And so it's for Second Amendment media people to get together and network and workshop. And Lee Williams is doing a 2-hour long talk and breakout session to help us understand how he does the important investigative type journalism that he does. And one of the things that I loved when we were talking to him, I'm on the organization committee for AmCon, is he said, well, in my background, I used to be an interrogator. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's that's probably the perfect kind of training you need to get truth out of some of these people that Lee is trying to talk
great
to.
Background and great experience. He did a lot of investigative journalism stuff for Gannett, for their Florida newspaper, and he comes from a very good background, and he's really good at getting facts, getting information, getting behind the scenes, and he's done a phenomenal job for us. And it's really our outreach with that, because when we work that is we allow the stories that he does to be used by virtually anybody. And so, like when he does a story, and actually ends up doing a couple a week, they're probably hitting about 30 different publications a week. So it's not just on our website; it's all over the country, and it exposes the other side, and it's great. It's been really, really powerful.
I just love it. I'm
I
sorry.
got it. You covered it. So.
Okay. It's like I probably forgot what you were going to ask now. But what I love about that is that you've covered so many bases. You've got to bring in the money, right? So that's Lauryn Hill. You've got to let the public know what you're doing and how you're doing it. That's Matt Coffey. You've got Bill Sack, who's your strategist. So, you know where you're going with the next thing. Adam Kraut is, coming alongside to, be sure that, your legacy carries on. And then Lee Williams is out there, demanding the truth in any ways that he possibly can to help all of us understand better. I just think that's brilliant how you've worked that out. Was that always something that you said, this is what in a perfect world I would have? Or is it just one of those things that you're like, oh, you know what we need? Let's develop this area.
Yeah, we've been in some of these areas before over the years, so they're not always necessarily new. I just think right now they're expanded, and with our funding that's increased, we're able to do more, reach more, and it's very rewarding to watch it. And it's also really great that everything doesn't have to stop at my desk now. Other
Yeah.
people make decisions, and that's really great.
That is awesome. So SAF, the cool kids do call it SAF, right? SAF,
Yeah.
Second Amendment Foundation. It is specifically focused on the Second Amendment, but why is SAF so vital to preserving all of our rights?
Well, I think the Second Amendment in the Constitution and our Bill of Rights is the cornerstone of our Bill of Rights. You can't protect and defend the rest of the Constitution without the Second Amendment. If you take a look at looking at other countries, look at Venezuela in recent times, they just hold fraudulent elections and people can't do anything about it because only the government has the guns, the firepower. You look at places like Iran, Russia, Cuba. When people get disarmed, you have no rights, you have no freedom. So that's why to me it's so important. It's the cornerstone of our liberty.
Boy, I couldn't have said that better.
So your annual gun rights policy is September 28th and 29th in San Diego. And earlier you had said that you don't have to do anything for that. And I'm shocked, Alan, because you normally wear tennis shoes and run like crazy. So people are going to be able to sit and talk to you?
Yeah, it's actually the 27th, 28th, 29th. The AMCOM parts on the 27th, and there's a reception in the night for people coming in early on the evening of the 27th. But I haven't been engaged in any of the planning, any of the speakers, anything. I mean, I did help get the hotel a year ago when we plotted out for San Diego. But by and large, everything going on is everybody else is doing on the staff. In fairness, in past GRPCs, the key person wasn't me. It was Julianne, my wife, Julianne Versnell. And she's backed off this year as well. She helped train some of the people doing it last year for this year. But we've been pretty much giving up the reins to GRPC and letting other people totally run it because they're going to have to do it in the future. And so might as well get the feet wet now. And so far, everything seems to be going like clockwork, and it looks really good. We've left great plans behind on how people need to do things to make it all work and keep the train on track. And so, it's almost at this point, as a matter of fact, it takes lots of man hours. I mean, unbelievable amount of man hours. The lay of the land on how to do it is there, and it's being executed. And so far, I'm pleased.
So it's going to be in California, which is one of the tough states, just like we did it in Chicago one year, and that was awesome. But so since it's in California, do you think maybe you're going to be able to get Newsom to come and talk?
Oh, he would be afraid to come near that place. No. We do have a Congressman Darrell Issa, who is
Awesome.
Southern California, will be speaking at the conference. We prefer to give the platforms, obviously, to pro-freedom people, not anti-freedom people like the governor of California. And of course, we're there to help, educate, train, and empower gun rights activists nationwide. And so it would be a waste of our time to have a governor of California there right now.
Well, I don't think he'd come anyway. I just kind of joking with that, but it's amazing. These states, the main cities control all the laws. And people there's so many gun owners in San Diego County and in that area that love guns. And it's too bad that the like Los Angeles and San Francisco are controlling the whole state as far as laws go, right?
Yeah, and in all honesty, the city of San Diego itself isn't that gun friendly either. So it's not quite as bad as Los Angeles or San Francisco. But yeah, the major population centers in virtually all the states where we have gun rights problems, it's those major population centers that mess things up for us. Like in Illinois, the city of Chicago dominates the state. In New York State, New York City dominates the state. In Massachusetts, Boston dominates the state. And so what happens is those cities that end up passing the laws that apply statewide because they have more legislators, in the legislature. And as a result, even if you're living in rural areas in those states, you have no firearms freedom.
Right. It's just like Arizona now with Maricopa County is pretty well controlling the whole state. And everybody outside of the county seems to be Second Amendment people. And it's just a shame that the one county could control the whole state.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that that's the whole county. It's the city of Phoenix as a whole, which dominates that county. Again, it's those major metropolitan areas that really create our problems.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch back on your wife, Julianne Versnell. I mean, she is no wallflower. She is in this fight fully. And I was just trying to check myself on the computer while you guys were chatting. She has spoken previously on a worldwide stage, right? On a worldwide issue. And then just recently, I think again, is it the United Nations? Please remind me where she was speaking.
Yeah, she's our vice president of international relations, and she, by the way, been with the foundation for 48 years. So she's been there virtually from the beginning. She just came back from Geneva, Switzerland, for a United Nations Arms Trade Treaty meeting that they had. That Arms Trade Treaty is still very much alive, and she'll be reporting on that at the Gun Rights Policy Conference as well. And she'll be at a World Forum meeting just before GRPC. I forget which country it's in Europe now as well. And so she's working with international partners that we have across the globe defending gun rights at the same time, just before she gets to GRPC. And she'll be reporting on that as well. So she'll be on the agenda because there's a lot happening internationally that, you know, affects the United States in many ways on gun rights. So people don't realize it, but, you know, import, export of firearms, traveling, if you want to travel out of the country on a hunting trip to another country and you want to take your gun with you, lead, regulations on lead bullets all across the globe that end up impacting manufacturing in the United States as well, or importing, bullets. So there's a whole lot going on internationally, and my reason we got involved internationally to start with is one, I don't think gun rights stop at any border, either a state border or a national border. And the other thing is when other countries of the EU is passing very anti-gun legislation and laws, what starts one place tends to move other places as well. And the gun prohibition lobby happens to be international, and so we can't ignore what they're doing outside our borders at the same time.
Boy, that's so important. And so it's interesting because, I'm part of a states' rights organization, so the AZCDL, because we understand how important it is to work with your state legislature. And then there are, national organizations that's really the main thing they do. And then here's SAF, you're part of cities, right? You're in DC, you're suing DC, right? You're suing Chicago. Then you've got state level Illinois cases, California cases, and national and now international. It's like what a huge umbrella SAF is covering.
Yeah, sometimes I just don't know how we do it because we do have a very limited staff. We work really hard. It's a 24/7 type operation. It's not a 9 to 5 job for any of our people, and you really have to be dedicated. And you have to be willing to sacrifice an awful lot in your personal life to be able to do this on a full-time basis. Again, 24/7, not 9 to 5, and it's tough, but it's also very rewarding. I mean, you get it's very fulfilling being able to do this because protecting freedom is really important. And now SAF's 50 years having a legacy of freedom means a whole lot to me.
That's fantastic. And I want to just ask one other question that you and I had discussed just on the phone one day. And I think it lends itself to, your full understanding of things. It's, we want to look at things sort of in a black and white a lot of times, but you understand the fuller picture. I think I was on the phone with you and I was like, boy, the ATF, it's out of control. We just need to defund and ban the ATF and get rid of the ATF. And, you'll see even legislators out there floating that line. And it sounds like it makes such perfect sense. But because you are brilliant, you said, all right, so we get rid of the organization. What about the regulations? They're still there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good sound bite. It sounds great it's raw meat for our troops because everybody's upset with how the ATF enforces laws, but all those laws are still on the books. And the ATF, we all know, are incompetent, and are bad, and it's hard for them to get all the funding that they want. But if they're gone, if you abolish them and left the laws in place because you can't get rid of the laws, who's going to enforce it? So then you move, say, to the FBI, who's much better funded and is much more competent in enforcing laws. And don't be careful what you wish for; you might get it. It's not it isn't always. It doesn't always work that way. I have this joke I give people when I'm particularly talking to non-gun audiences, and I ask them the question, "What is four legs and chases cats?" And of course, everybody in the audience goes, "Oh, a dog." And I go, "No, I'm sorry, it's Mrs. Katz and her attorney." And the point, and the point I'm trying to make is that things are always the way they appear to be.
Mhm.
And and so you have to look at things that way as well. And I think that's part of our strategies, not just in the courtrooms, but in everything we do, that makes us so effective.
Absolutely. So
But
we
if I
really,
can, though, real quickly, I would like to talk about the gun rights policy conference just a little bit more, because
yes, please.
I'd like to encourage some of your viewers and listeners to join us. Again, it's September 27th through 29th in San Diego at the Mission Hills Marriott. And you can find out all the information about it going to saf.org, and registration is still open. And so the conference itself is free. You have to pay to get yourself there, but lunch and receptions are on our dime. And I'd like to invite all your listeners and viewers to attend, as well as the AMCON information for the media conferences, which runs on the Friday of the event, is on the website as well. So again, saf.org, and I hope to meet some of your listeners and viewers at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in San Diego, September 27th through 29th.
I absolutely love that you touched back on that, because this is such an important event. This has become a do not miss event for us specifically because it's a big event. You have hundreds of attendees, but yet somehow it's still very intimate. And, just passing people in the hallways and the encounters that you have around, the breakfast table or whatnot, you can't have that any other place on the planet like you can at GRPC. I've made genuine lifelong friendships there. I have met, other media people that encourage me in what I do. I've met other industry people there that help fuel the knowledge that I have. It's absolutely the best group of people you're ever going to meet anywhere. And I mean, you get to do it for free as the public. We get to just walk in for free and get fed. It's absolutely the best party ever. Do not miss it.
And I would like to make a comment to those who fly to the conference.
Mhm.
Bring an extra suitcase because you're going to get all kinds of stuff, lots of information, books, things to take back with you. And so you're going to need that extra suitcase.
Well,
Absolutely.
these days, a lot of there's books and things we don't give out in hard copies anymore. Everything is digital, so you'll be able to download it all and then have it on your computer or your cell phone. It saves us a little bit of money, and it's a whole lot easier. And we're living in a different world. And I guess that your AMCON media conference part, a lot of that will talk about new technologies as well, and how to reach people in quicker means, and reach more people.
Absolutely. I mean, we are all citizen journalists nowadays. And so AmCon is really, trying to reach out and help people understand the power and the impact that every single person with a cell phone now has. And even with the censorship and even with all the demonetizing and everything else, just in sheer numbers, if we could engage all of our citizen journalists out there to just tell their own personal stories about why the Second Amendment is important to them. This fight's already won. It's just a matter of, let the clock run out on the other side and their nonsense.
I agree.
Absolutely. Well, Alan Gottlieb, thank you so much for giving us this much of your time. There's probably 9 lawsuits that got filed while we were sitting here talking with each other. And thank you so much for all you do.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing both of you at the Gun Rights Policy Conference.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. That is a fun event. And it's going to be really cool because it's in San Diego where it's not 180 degrees.
Boy, that's the truth. But it is interesting that they will take uh, an event like that kind of into the belly of the beast, like when it was in Chicago, I was like, we're going to have like 5 people walk in the door and that's it, you know. No, it was huge. It was I would say, one of the more well attended conferences
Because
Yes, people fly in, but these were people that live there.
because you need to go to Illinois. You need to
Mhm.
go there, Cheryl. I've gone several times, and you go into Chicago, everybody's anti-gun. But as soon as you step out of Chicago city
Yeah.
limits,
Yeah.
they're everyone,
That's what we
everyone.
experienced when
And it's
we
so
went there.
shocking because it's a completely different person.
Absolutely. So again, I definitely want to encourage everybody to please make plans to come to the Gun Rights Policy Conference. You seriously, you can't imagine how impactful it is without having been there. We had a couple of the GRPCs that were virtual. And I say we because I've been blessed to be asked as a speaker every year for, I think, 9 years now, something like that. But during COVID, we went virtual and it was still important. It was still a gathering of people, but it's nothing like that face to face, meeting somebody for the first time, shaking hands or reconnecting with friends that you've made over the years. Maybe you've never even seen each other in person. Maybe you just know each other from online interactions or texting each other. And to be able to be there for those 3 days is priceless. It really is. And so when I say 3 days, I mean AmCon on the Friday. It's all day on Friday. It really is geared towards networking and workshopping and learning how to be a better journalist. And if you say to yourself, well, I'm not a journalist, I'm not in the media. Again, you have a cell phone, it has a camera, it has a microphone. You are a citizen journalist, whether you're enacting that or not. So come hang out with us, learn some cool tips and tricks at AmCon on Friday, the September 27th. This is 2024.
What time does that start?
That starts as early as 9 a.m. We register from 8 a.m. The first speaker is Lee Williams that we talked about. He's up at 9 a.m. We've got some awesome speakers. We've got Gabe El Taib, who we've had on the show recently, who is founder of Big Man Comics. He's going to talk about using storytelling, right? Just like the other side. The other side uses storytelling to impact our culture and cause people to think negatively about our values. We need to understand how to do that as well. We have Jason Jameson, who's actually our son in law, talking about the impact of AI on journalism, specifically the Second Amendment world, how that's playing out. Um, just very quickly, and this is not a partisan thing. GRPC and AmCon are nonpartisan. We are here for everyone who believes in our Second Amendment rights and wants to support our Bill of Rights. But when you talk about the AI, um, and I think this leans into what you were telling me this morning about Alexa, if you ask your Alexa gadget about, hey, how did you word it?
Hey, should I vote for Trump?
And then Alexa says,
That said that well, she doesn't give advice on politicians and politics. And then you turn around and ask, what about what's her name?
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. It went on to say how all the things that she's done and how great she is. So that's kind of AI-ish, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a component of that in there, but it's just that very kind of thing. Maybe sort of a subtle thing, but yet at the same time, glaring, right? It should give the exact same answer to both questions. And the fact that, we are using AI to create images and to create, um, you know, pre-worded articles and, these kinds of things, uh,
But
it's going to be impacted by an attitude and by the culture just because AI can only spit out what it's been fed.
but okay, it's Alexa, is that right? Am I saying that right?
Mm.
So
We clearly don't have one in
if
our home.
if you're asking Alexa for advice, you probably need some help. Okay.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
that's fair enough.
you can Google
Honestly.
search things and get information, but I mean, if you're asking who to vote for
Yeah.
by Alexa,
Yeah. No.
you probably need some help.
And that's the other thing too, is to be an informed voter is so important. And, nobody can tell you who you should vote for, but there are websites out there, there are tools out there to help you sort of like organize your thoughts in your mind, right? So you could say, what are my values? Are they more this way or more that way, on
It's a-
each major topic? And that can help you figure out, which side of the aisle, you lean more towards. And now with this big shift out there that there are so many more people registered as independents, right? So there's the Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Independent. Those are people basically saying out loud, we want out of the madness. We want to be free thinkers. We want to vote on the policies and on the issues and not on the personalities. The powers that be in the two major parties should be paying close attention to that. And I think that is a positive shift because instead of just being, lumped in to a party platform, people are being much more intelligent about how they're choosing to elect people. That's my
So,
hope and my assumption.
so it's so easy, folks. You don't need Alexis. You don't need Google. All you need is one of these right here. The Constitution of the United States, just a small little booklet, and you go and you say, okay, which one of the politicians in my area follow this Constitution? Okay, none of them, or maybe one or two.
That's
Those
the
are the ones
hard
you vote.
part.
Those ones you vote to. Just because they swear to the oath when they get in doesn't mean that they're following. So when you make laws that are not constitutional, you need to think about who to vote for and who not to vote for.
And that's the hard part is like
It's not
do
hard.
it on the
It's pretty
front.
easy.
No, I'm saying on the front end.
Yeah,
Don't wait until you've got a bad law, right? Or a politician rather than a public servant to have to figure out, all right, how do we vote this person out? Their name is already known and they're already,
and look at the states like Chicago. How
Mhm.
many people in Chicago vote versus the outskirts of Chicago? I think that more people vote in Chicago per capita than they do on the outside. And that's the problem. If all the people on the outside would be heard,
Mhm.
then we wouldn't have the situation that we have.
Yeah.
Just like the gun owners in Arizona.
Mhm.
We have way more gun owners than what was voted.
Mhm.
And
That's a frustration.
that's a frustration. So if we just vote,
Yeah.
we could change things.
Yeah, vote your values. We all want to protect what we love. Vote your values. It's really not as complicated as the other side wants to make it. All right. So, speaking of things being not complicated, we love to buy American made products as often as possible because supports American jobs on American soil. And this particular list of products, set of products, is also going to support the work that Alan Gottlieb and SAF, the Second Amendment Foundation, is doing. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to understand that this is an invitation only shopping network, private shopping network. But Dan and I are extending the invitation to you today to go to patriothousehold.com/GFR for Gun Freedom Radio. Every dollar you spend on these American made products support not only the work of Second Amendment Foundation and the gun rights policy conference that they put on and the AmCon event that they put on for free and feed you, they get a small portion of every dollar you spend at patriothousehold.com/GFR. Well, what do you buy there, Dan?
Steaks,
Yeah, you do. They have incredible beef products.
shaving
It's
creams,
yes,
toothpaste, or
yes,
teeth paste.
teeth paste. Yes, it's all the products that you're normally going to these big box stores to buy, and those big box stores use your money to diminish your freedoms and mine. So instead, go to patriothousehold.com/GFR, buy your laundry soap, your skincare, your delicious snacks. You can set your order and forget it, which is what I do, and it shows up magically on my doorstep. Couldn't
And
be any
binge
more.
purchase to your heart's content.
Exactly. I love that. Couldn't be any more convenient. Great quality products. There's not been one thing that we've tried that we didn't like.
What
Or
about
you can
these
shop
things?
as you need it,
What about
right?
those things? You don't like these, do
Oh,
you?
I love
She's
those.
got it. She's got them in her car. She's got them in her bedroom. She's got them on the office here. She's
Got
got them
them
in the
in my
kitchen.
briefcase.
Yeah.
These are my quick go-to, simply fit. They're like a granola snack. Nut and fruit clusters. Peach praline is my favorite, just gonna say. But they are wonderful. Please go shopping there. It helps everybody do this work. You are shopping your values with your dollars, right? Or you're using your dollars to support your values. patriothousehold.com/GFR. And when you head out on the range, especially when it's hot and mucky outside, which it still is, we're in the studio in September 4th, 2024 in Arizona. It's still summer. It's not fall yet. It's not even feeling like
Isn't
fall.
it always summer?
Seems like it. LockedInGrit.com. This was created by good friends of ours, Brian and Shelley Hill of The Complete Combatant. It is a liquid shooting sports chalk for no slip, better traction, and heightened connection. Safer and faster shooting can be found with LockedInGrip.com. And Attorneys on Retainer is an organization. We are clients of theirs. If in fact you do end up needing to use your firearm, which we all pray we do not, to save our lives, then the first thing you're going to need is an attorney. So Attorneys on Retainer are fueled through Attorneys for Freedom. And if you want to click on our main page, gunfreedomradio.com, scroll down, you will find the tile for Attorneys on Retainer. It's very affordable. It is very important because it's not like the movies. You know, if you do have to save your life, defend your life with a firearm, you're not walking home in the sunset with your firearm that night. You're 99.9%, you're going to end up in a jail cell for at least a few hours. They're going to confiscate your firearm, and you want skilled attorneys on your side. So, Attorneys on Retainer, check them out on our website, gunfreedomradio.com. Scroll down, and when you click through there, again, we get a small piece of that, and it helps fuel the work that we do. All right. Until next time, we want to definitely thank our awesome guest today, Alan Gottlieb, and all the work that he does in his organization. Thank all of our amazing listeners and viewers out there. We couldn't do what we do without you. It wouldn't matter because Dan and I would have these amazing conversations with awesome people. And, that would be the end of it. But when you listen, you take these conversations around your dinner tables, and that's everything. So if you want to watch this video again, go to YouTube, Gunstreamer, the OPSLAN smartphone app. Please be sure to like it, share it, subscribe to it, hit the notifications button, because that tells those organizations, those platforms, that you value this work. And if you want to listen to the audio only version, you go to gunfreedomradio.com and
Binge listen to a heart's content.
with the on demand tab.
Darling.
And if you want to see photos and links and bios, links to like, how do I attend GRPC? How do I attend the AmCon event? Then you would go to the guest tab. You would find Alan Gottlieb. Click on there, and all the information is there. It is a growing list of subject matter experts. And when you spend time there, we don't hate that. All right. Until next time, we're gonna
Pray for our nation.
Pray
for the guys that pretend to be our leaders.
pray for people in leadership positions like Alan Gottlieb, right?
Yep.
And the ones that we're frustrated with, right? The ones we don't like too much,
Vote 'em
like
out.
those politicians.
Vote 'em out.
Maybe we'll pray especially hard for them, and that they find other jobs that they're more suited at than trying to be our representatives. But anyway, until next time, be good to each other. Have a great week, and God bless.
Bye-bye.